When I first started street photography, I really had no idea what I was doing. But after years of trial and error, I've learned so much about what it takes to make eye-catching street photos. So in this video, I'm going to share what I wish I'd known when I first picked up a camera and hit the streets to help you get the most out of your street photography. Lesson 1. When I realised that the best street photography, in my opinion, is centred around the human experience, I bought a 35mm lens with the view to get up close to photograph strangers in the street to try and capture those human moments. But as soon as I went out to try it, I froze and I lost all confidence, and I never thought I'd be able to do it at all. And it is really difficult to get up the courage to go out and photograph strangers in public, and the fear never really goes away. But over time there are a few things that I did that really helped me build up my confidence. I started off photographing people from a distance, then I got a bit closer but from behind, then I started shooting from the hip, and then I built up enough confidence over time to start taking photographs of people up close and front on. And you know what I realised? Most people just don't care at all, and most of the time they don't even know that you're taking a photograph of them anyway, depending on your approach. This confidence has given me the ability to get really close and capture images that I really want to take. Build up your confidence over time, and then the more you go out and do it, the easier it will get. Lesson 2. Have you ever heard the advice, use one camera and one lens to really get good at street photography? Well, it is really good advice, but I took it quite seriously and used only one focal length, 35mm, for almost 2 years. And while this was really great for me to get used to seeing in that focal length and to really instinctively frame shots how I wanted them, I realised that I needed to change things up to both keep things interesting for me, but also to see how my eye changed using a different focal length. I bought a 28mm lens for the first time and have been using that the last few weeks, which has really opened me up to a whole different way of seeing, composition possibilities, and the vibes that wider focal lengths can bring. It's difficult, but I'm really glad I decided to experiment. While using one camera and one lens is good advice, it can also be really beneficial to try different focal lengths to see what really works best for you, or to inject a bit of inspiration by changing your gear. If you're not sure what to use, you can always try a zoom lens for a while and then see how you get on. Trying different focal lengths can really help you improve, but so can sticking to one camera, one lens. The choice is up to you. Lesson 3. When I first heard about the decisive moment made famous by Henri Cartier-Bresson, the idea that there is a moment where everything comes together perfectly, which is the time to click the shutter, I thought, well, that's easy for you to say, right? You're a professional photographer, able to go to big cities filled with people all the time. It's just luck and access. But over time, I learned that decisive moments happen all the time, wherever we find ourselves. And sure, there's always going to be an element of luck, but it's more about being out as often as possible to have the best chance of getting the shots that you want to get. I also learned to anticipate, to watch for patterns, to really predict what might happen next. And street photography is so much about heightening your observational skills, and you can do that pretty much anywhere. Capturing decisive moments isn't about luck, it's about putting in the steps and practicing observation, anticipation, and quick reflexes over time. Lesson 4. When I first started street photography, I was focused on the grand scene, the architecture, sweeping views of light and shadow, but I realised my photos lacked a bit of soul. They were missing that sort of subtle human interaction that's so interesting and exciting to photograph. But then I really started to try and notice and capture these small moments of human connection. A small touch of a hand, a slight change of expression, a moment of love or anger or sadness. And these small moments held the most emotion, and I realised that was what I wanted to focus on with my street photography. Looking for and capturing human gestures and expressions is at the heart of some great street photography, conveying emotion and telling stories. Lesson 5. Before I started street photography, I spent years doing landscape photography, where I'd always default to using the lowest ISO possible to get the sharpest, cleanest image. Every time I hit the streets, I'd also set my ISO to the lower setting and meter for the highlights, but I didn't really realise that this was really holding my street photography work back. Street photography isn't about perfection. In fact, a lot of the time it's the opposite. It's about capturing the human condition, which is inherently imperfect. We don't see shadow as complete deep blacks, and we can still see detail in shaded areas, so as soon as I learned to use exposure properly for each scene and didn't care how high my ISO needed to be, it was a lot more freeing and I started to get better results. Don't worry about grainy images or always trying to get pin-sharp perfect photos. Sometimes the best images are ones that are full of imperfections. Lesson 6. One of the biggest problems I found when I really got into street photography was where to go and what to actually photograph. I used to walk around aimlessly for hours on end without any real direction or confidence on how to capture good photos. Street photography is a lot about walking and exploring and never really getting much. But that means it can take a long time to build up your practice and to improve. But there's one thing that really helped me practice and start making images that I was really happy with, and that was photographing events. An event like a protest or a parade or cultural gathering or ceremony makes such great places to practice street photography, usually in busy situations with lots of people doing lots of interesting things. And on top of that, no one really cares about photographers at those kinds of events, making it the perfect place for a beginner to practice. At an event, often people in the crowd are more interesting to photograph than the event itself, so bear that in mind. It doesn't have to be a big event, it could just be something like a summer fair or a weekend farmer's market, anywhere really that there's a larger congregation of people who are likely to display moments that are photographic. That's something that really helped me improve quickly. Photograph as many events as possible. They're the best way to get a lot of practice in fast. Lesson 7. One of the main reasons why I started to shoot film last summer is I just love the way that it looks. The way colour and texture is rendered on film is just so beautiful in my opinion, and the process to get there is so much fun as well. But as the light started to fade and the days got much shorter heading into winter, I hit a bit of a problem. There just wasn't enough light in the day to get the most out of colour film. So rather than give up or switch back to digital, for the first time as a photographer, I started using black and white film and chose to shoot it with intention. When I used to shoot digital, the only time I really used black and white was when I converted the occasional photo in post. I never went out with the intention to shoot only in monochrome until I shot roll after roll of black and white film, and I'm so glad that I did. It's a completely different way of working, and rather than making colour the main big focus of an image, I started instead to look for contrast, composition, feelings and moments. I started to see results I was really happy with and began making frames and compositions I probably wouldn't have considered if I was shooting in colour. There's something so classic about shooting in black and white, and that's probably from all the exposure to the greats of street and documentary photography who used to shoot black and white film back in the day as that was all that was available. Whether you shoot digital or film, try going out and shooting in black and white only and see how your photography changes or even improves over time. Lesson 8. One of the most frequent questions I get on this channel, and one of the things that held me back the most when I started as a beginner, is being unsure about the law and ethics of street photography. It's a big topic and I made a whole video about it, but in a nutshell, when I looked at the works of the greats that have documented people in public over the years, effectively documenting human society and the way that we act and dress and live for decades, the work is valuable, it's insightful and inspirational, and I decided that I really wanted to be a tiny part of that long and great history. It really comes down to your intentions, and once I realised that I wanted to document humanity and that I really wasn't doing anything wrong, I got closer, bolder and started to make more engaging frames. I got a lot more confident and began to make photographs that really excited me. It can be a controversial subject, taking photos of strangers in public, but if you want to do it for the right reasons and you've read up about the legality of doing street photography and photographing people in public in your country, then you'll be a lot more confident getting out there and making the photos that you really want to make. Learn about the laws and ethics of street photography and then decide on your approach. Lesson 9. Street photography is one of the most accessible genres of photography. All you need is a camera and then you go out your front door. It's freeing and it's exciting and you can do it pretty much anywhere really. But the problem is that it's hard. It's very hard to do well and it can be very testing when you go out time and time again and get nothing of note. When I first started street photography, I was impatient. I expected to get really good photos straight away for some reason, but then over time I just enjoyed to learn the process, to observe, wait and be patient. The great thing about street photography is that on any given day you might go out and see absolutely nothing worth photographing, or you might just get the best photo you've ever taken. The sooner you learn to be patient, persevere and build resilience to failure and disappointment, the more enjoyable street photography will become, and then the better results you're going to get over time. Learn to be patient and roll with the punches with a mindset focused on resilience and optimism, and you'll become a much better street photographer. Lesson 10. A lot of successful and exciting photography is about access. If you want to photograph wild African elephants, for example, but you live in Slough, that's going to be pretty much impossible unless you can afford regular flights out to the savannah in Kenya. The same goes for street photography. If you want to photograph city life but you live in a small town or village, then you won't really be able to do that unless you make regular trips to the capital. So that's why learning to really photograph what you have access to is so valuable. I thought I always had to go to London to have any chance of making great street photos, and while it's of course one of the best cities in the world, I learned to appreciate a little bit more what I have close to me, like local festivals and markets, the racecourse and the small town football club. The racecourse and football ground especially have turned into little projects for me that I hope will evolve and grow over time. If you can get to a city to practice street photography, then that's great, but you can still do it in the smallest of places. You just need to find something interesting to you to start documenting. Don't underestimate or overlook your own backyard. You never know what you might be able to capture close to home. Lesson 11. Street photography is a numbers game. The more steps you put in and the more images you take, the better you get over time, but also the more chance you have of stumbling across something exciting or different that makes for a great photograph. I used to go out sporadically once or twice a month and I'd get pretty down about not really getting images that excited me. But then I committed to a weekly practice of getting out there, photographing whenever I could, even scheduling time to go out and doing street photography. Once I started putting in regular time, my observation, confidence and composition skills improved dramatically. To be a good street photographer, you need to put in the work. Consistent practice, even in small increments, leads to significant improvement over time. Lesson 12. At the beginning of my street photography journey, I didn't really know exactly what it was. I was travelling at the time and was naturally taking photos of things happening in public, but I didn't really realise it was a whole genre of photography. I saw a few posts on Instagram of these abstract and minimalist images and thought that was the way that you needed to do it, until I heard the term street photography and picked up a couple of photo books. And that's when I realised that up until then, most of my images were sort of quite simple, seemed a bit hesitant, and ultimately were pretty boring. That was until I decided to get closer. Now, I don't mean that I decided to get really close and start shoving my camera in people's faces, but I did buy a wider angle lens and aimed to get a bit closer and into the action on the streets, looking for moments of emotion and trying to find scenes that told a bit of a story about humanity. When I started to get closer in subject matter, closer in emotional connection to the kinds of images I was trying to achieve, that's when I started to make work that really excited me. Explore getting closer. It's the best way to really start progressing as a street photographer, in my opinion. Hopefully these lessons will give you a jolt of motivation, but sometimes the best way to get excited to go out and shoot is by watching another photographer out there taking photos and exploring their process. So that's where this video comes in.